Hello, I'm Steve Daniels with the Sound Organization, and welcome to another episode of SoundOrg TV. For this episode, I'm delighted to be joined by one of my oldest friends in the audio industry, Alan Gibb, Managing Director of the Chord Company, who have made award-winning cables since 1985. Alan, welcome to SoundOrg TV. Good to see you.
It's great to be here, Steve. Thanks for the invite.
First off, can you let our viewers know a little bit about the background of the Chord Company, why it's some of the best upgrades you can make to an audio system, and really what differentiates the Chord Company from other audio video cables out there on the market?
Well, that's a story that could probably take a couple of hours to go through, because I'm always told that I can bore for England talking about cables. But to sort of try and keep it very brief, cables are quite simple things. We tend to view them as pieces of mechanical engineering. Although they're transferring electricity, generally speaking, unless you have the mechanical or the structure in the cable to actually transfer the signal, you're basically going to come a bit unstuck. And I think that's always been our approach. We are very, very keen on making cables that actually sound good, rather than having some clever ideas behind them and then sticking to them, come hell or high water. So it's very important for us that when we do try something or we introduce a change to our cables, then there should be a very clear, audible improvement to the musical performance of that cable. And the company started over 30 years ago. And unlike many companies, we started with our entry-level products. We only made two simple products. And people sort of asked us, along the way, oh, could you make one of these? Could you make one of these? And generally speaking, over the years, we've broadened our range really to satisfy what our customers want and also what our own systems want. So it's been a gradual process of evolution. There's been lots of improvements in materials and technology and engineering. And generally speaking, we just dabble into these things, check them out. If they're applicable to actually making, more music come through the system, then we incorporate them into designs. The other thing that we try to do is we try never to leave anybody behind. So especially with our bigger cables, if we do make an improvement or an upgrade, we will really try very hard to allow existing customers to either trade in a cable and develop it along with the new thing, the new developments, or you generally find that the second-hand side of the product is pretty good, so people move them on and actually develop their systems with our developments.
Alan, the Chord Company made some big announcements really before the world kind of shut down, and one of those was using a very prestigious name. Certainly I grew up with it being a fighter plane, English Electric. Can you tell us about the introduction of that brand, where it came from and the thinking behind it?
It's same reason as you, Steve. I loved the English Electric Lightning. It was when British military aerospace was actually pushing things forward. It was one of the fastest planes available, and I kind of admired it as a child. I made plastic models of it, and I was actually looking for some information on the internet, and I came across the English Electric logo, and I was really sort of taken by it. Thought it was, very cool logo. And that afternoon, we had to do some copyright stuff with our lawyers, for the Chord Company. And the English Electric went out of business a long, long time ago. And I asked them, just, as a way of conversation, I said, what if somebody hasn't used a name or a logo for a long time? Is it fair game? Is it up for grabs? And they basically said yes. So I said, well, would you just check to see if we can actually take over this brand name, as it's not been used for 20 odd years. They did the searches and they said yes. So years ago, I just registered it. I actually did it by myself, not as part of the Chord Company, and just felt that it would be something that one day we could actually use. We've worked quite closely with another English company called Chord Electronics, which obviously you guys know very well. And right at the start of both of our companies, we had a gentleman's agreement that we wouldn't make any electronics under the Chord brand name, and they wouldn't really be making any cables under their brand name. So when we wanted to develop the 8 switch, which is a network, well, a streaming switch, then we were struggling to have a name to sell it with. And at that point, I remembered that we had the English Electric, if you like, brand available, and we activated it.
Alan, many of our retailers and customers we've heard from have gone wild over the 8 switch and the difference it's made. There's rumors of new products from English Electric. Can you share with us anything about new product introductions coming from that brand?
Well, the only major complaint we've had with the English Electric switch was that it only had 8 ports. So obviously there's a limit to the amount of devices you could connect. And we have quite a strong presence in the UK custom install industry. And there were a lot of installers that said, oh, well, I'd really like something with a bit more scale that could maybe do 16, 14 ports. Is there any chance you could take, if you like, the sound quality and customize it so it would actually fit in a rack? So very shortly, we will be introducing what we call the 16 switch. And in fact, as you're in, I'm working from home, I can actually show you one here. It's a 1U rack mount, and it basically has 16 ports on it. It's a 2-zone switch, and it's got a dual mono power supply, if you like, in it. So each zone has its own power supply on it, and that means they both operate completely independently. There are a lot of custom install jobs where people like to keep sockets live and connected to a switch, so that when the customer or the client comes home, he can just replug his laptop in at his desk. The problem with that is, while there's nothing plugged into that socket, you're actually having a very large antenna picking up high frequency noise. With the switch, we're not about, we don't get you extra 1s and 0s. A lot of digital people get quite upset saying it's 1s and 0s. What we're really interested in is, okay, a 1's 5 volts. You've got to be working pretty hard to lose a 1 or lose 5 volts, but it's what comes along with the 5 volts that we're trying to cut out. So it's got a very low noise power supply, so we don't introduce high frequency noise into the system, and it's run with a much more accurate clock that you'd find in a network switch. And we do this because when you take care of those things, there is quite an audible improvement when you're listening to music. It's not there for running printers and stuff. So really the idea was just to scale that up and actually give the smaller custom install jobs the opportunity to up the performance of a multi-room system or a cinema system within a client's existing house, but at the same time try and hold down the price rather than getting a product which is just a massive amount of technology that's a bit of overkill.
Another new development that you had was the Chord Omnic transmission fluid. Can you share some of the development? Because I remember when you told me and I was like,
no, I hate this stuff. It drives me up the wall, Steve. Here's the magic fluid, here's the green pen, here's the blue whatever it is, and turn around anti-clockwise 7 times and your system will sound better. This was quite an interesting thing. I was over in Japan visiting our Japanese distributor, And he said, "Oh, I've got this amazing fluid." And I said, "Whoa, no, I'm not interested." He said, "No, maybe you can use it on your system." I said, "No, I've done these things in the past. I was the guy when I was young and at university who coated all of his records in permastat, anti-static fluid, and then spent the rest of my life on a cleaning machine trying to get the stuff off." So I was dead against it. Anyway, to cut a long story short, he said, "Look, I've got 2 XLR cables and I've treated one pair of them, and I haven't treated the other pair." And he did the classic. He sort of played it to me, and it was a massive difference. I was, really quite shocked.
Alan, you've had some really neat product introductions during this time. I'd like to focus on 2 of them at different ends of the spectrum. The C-Screen X and the new name system Burndy cables. Could you give us a little insight on the development of both those and the differences they bring about?
Sure. I'll start with the C-Screen X. Obviously, this is a loudspeaker cable. It's shielded, which is in keeping with the way we generally believe a cable should be. There's a lot of high frequency noise kicking around a house, and any piece of wire acts as an antenna, and it picks up this noise and feeds it into the signal ground plane, which is a bit too long-winded to talk about just now, but generally it brings down the performance of the system. So the cable is shielded. The X of C-Screen X actually stands for an insulation material called XLPE, which is cross-linked polyethylene for anybody who's interested. This is a material that comes in several different forms, and we'd looked at it in the past, but actually weren't satisfied with the way it worked. PTFE, or Teflon as it's sometimes known, used to be our sort of go-to insulation material. At the C-Screen end of our range, PTFE is very, very expensive to use. And so we had to look at alternative insulation material. So the XLPE was something that we've been rolling out on some of our higher end cables. And as the company has got a bit bigger, it was making such a big improvement there that we actually got our suppliers to make some sort of test lengths using XLPE instead of polyethylene, which is the normal insulation. And the differences were really clear. It was a massive step up. And we then felt that we could actually introduce that. We are buying a lot more of that cable now than when we first launched it. So the economies of scale allowed us to actually introduce that cable at quite a competitive price, and it really does lift the performance over and above polyethylene. And it's obviously a very clear audible difference, because at the end of the day, that's what interests us. If you can't hear a difference, well, why spend more money on it? The Burndy is we're probably about 8-9 miles north of Name Audio's factory, and they quite often lend us bits and pieces of equipment. And I was using a big NDX based streaming system in the demo room to develop a few, or to try some things out with some cables. And we just weren't getting the results that I was getting at home, which is a non-name system. And so I just started to look at the way the system was set up, and I basically had a look inside a Burndy, and they use an unshielded set of cables inside the Burndy, and they're basically over 1 meter in length. So I just ordered a couple of cables in and got one of our technicians just to put a set of shielded cables into that. You've always got to be very careful when you're messing with Name, because these guys listen very closely to whatever they do as well, and they're also interested in getting a musical output from the system rather than just a sort of a hi-fi output. So we had a listen, and even though it's carrying basically power in most of them and no signal, we noticed quite a large improvement, and that was with an XPS power supply into the NDX. And we thought, well, this is worth looking at. So we just kept on improving the cable right up to sort of a tail-on chord music level, and the difference was massive.
Alan, thanks for the time you've spent with us today and giving us such a great insight into the Chord Company and why cables are such a vital element in any audio or video system.
Thanks very much for having me, and I look forward to speaking to you face to face and not over the internet.
If you've enjoyed this episode of SoundOrg TV, please, as always, give us suggestions for things you'd like to see in the future, and we will try and incorporate them. Again, as always, if you've liked this video, hit the subscribe button or like button, and apologies to Harry, my son, who thinks I'm so uncool for saying that. Happy listening, guys.